आपका धर्म आपका स्टेशन टीवी जागृति।
And we say Sitaram to your listeners on Radio Jaagriti 102.7 FM, our viewers on TV Jaagriti. Hey, those of you joining us home here in Trinidad and Tobago, regionally, internationally as well. Welcome to a special edition of Conversations right here on your number one radio and TV Jaagriti. Of course, at this time, you're accustomed to the program Straight Talk with our CEO, Mr. Lukesh Maharaj. But as we promised you last week, as we promised you on our Monday, when we had no program, we have a special guest with us in the studio, and we're having a special edition of the program, Straight Talk. Of course, we've got with us Professor Peter Baofu with us in studio. Sitaram, and welcome to Radio and TV Jaagriti.
Thank you.
Okay, tell us a little bit about Peter Baofu.
Well, I am an American author and visionary. I have written more than 160 books in all fields of knowledge, in the social sciences, in the humanities, in the formal sciences, and in the humanities. And I try to propose more than 128 different new theories and visions about the human future in relation to the mind, nature, culture, and society. Ultimately, for some unified theories of everything, not just one, but several of them. And I have been in more than 100 different countries around the world. And I do that intentionally in order to understand humanity on the ground, not just by reading a documentary or watching a film and all that.
So we are privileged and happy that you're sharing some time with us, that we can discuss a little bit about the topics that pertain to Trinidad in particular, but Trinidad in relation to the world as well. Yeah, we want to talk a little bit about crime, about politics, about education, about health, and as if I may, Peter mentioned to me earlier on, we can talk about anything, right? 126 new theories. How did this come about?
Well, there's a long story. To cut the story short, ever since I was a little kid, I was interested in everything. And even when I was a little kid, I was always thinking to understand humanity, the future, civilization, and the universe. Of course, at that time, I did not understand much of anything, but the joy was there. So I have been very active, and I have been very, very consumptive in terms of acquiring knowledge. So over the years, I have been expanding, and I always try to understand everything. And I don't like to focus on one thing, but look at the totality of all forms of knowledge. And that's why 160 books so far, they are in all fields of knowledge, in the natural sciences, the social sciences, the humanities, and the formal sciences, and for this reason.
I'm seeing a term here as a polymath. He is known for his pioneering works in all fields of knowledge with different visions in regard to the following future evolutions and transformations. For those who may be coming across this term for the first time, a polymath, what is that?
A polymath, by definition, like poly are multiple. They are not just uni or mono. It is a person. This kind of people do not exist anymore. I mean, there are not too many of them because we are in the age of professional specialization. Everyone is supposed to specialize in something, but the trade-off for that is that people don't look at the totality, and you don't have too many people anymore who are willing to look at the totality. And we need those people, just as we need the specialists.
Because then you can combine all disciplines into understanding totally a holistic understanding of the entire microcosm of everything.
Because many of the problems that we have nowadays on Earth, not just in Trinidad, in a way they are global, they are linked in a multiple ways. If you focus on one dimension, let's say economics from the standpoint of only economics, then you will miss a large other perspectives which interact together with many other things.
Okay. You know, you're speaking about interaction with all the disciplines, let's say economics and politics, economics and health, economics and wealth, economics and crime. How easy is it to understand how all of these things mesh together in this world?
The answer is no. It's not easy at all. That's why when I talk about, as you just mentioned, economics and politics, it's too simplistic. I don't look into economics and politics. I look at economics and political science, sociology, chemistry, physics, cosmology, biology, psychology, linguistics, philosophy, dancing, music. You might say this has absolutely nothing to do with economics. No. That is ignorant. And that is very unfortunate because I make a lot of predictions in my publication about the future. That's why I just propose some theories, but also some new visions. And in the future, and we are moving toward that direction, but in the farther future, the kind of mindset that we are evolving to, it's not that human anymore in the end, because this kind of thinking, in a way, is they are very human-centric. I propose one of my visions of about the human future, by the way, is what I call post-humanity, in the sense that humans like you and me will not exist anymore. They will become extinct. And one of the major reasons for that is because the kind of mindset that we have, this is a good example, we think only in a small box. But many of the problems that we are facing nowadays are getting larger and larger and larger. And we come to realize eventually that all of these are linked together. And the human mind, the ordinary human mind especially, is not able to cope with this. But we are moving toward the direction of the post-human mind.
That's what we post-human mind after humans tend to exist.
Yes, just like the dinosaurs, they became extinct many years ago.
What happens to humans, or what happens after humans cease existence?
And that's why I have written more than 160 books and 128 new theories and visions. There's no one single answer. See, this is a human tendency again. There's a human tendency for thousands of years now. People like to think. They like to propose a new vision, a new theory, and they use that to explain everything else. There's kind of human obsession. I often mention this to many other people. There are so many other examples. You have someone like Karl Marx, that's Marxism. You have Adam Smith, that is his notion of capitalism. You have Sigmund Freud, his notion of psychoanalysis. You have Buddhism, the Buddha. You have Christianity, Jesus Christ, and the Bible. And each of them will give you one dimension of thinking, one vision, one theory, and they will use that to explain everything else. It doesn't work that way. The post-human mind is getting away from it because this kind of thinking, in a way, is understandable, but they are very primitive. This kind of thinking, because it's based on the limitation of the human mind. And it's also as a legacy of the human past, which was very ignorant and superstitious. So, but we are moving more and more away from it. In the post-human future, many of the things that we have nowadays, you talk about Buddhism, Islam, Hinduism, capitalism, democracy, all this kind of one-dimensional thinking. No.
You know, as you mentioned, Sigmund Freud and Marxism, and in the beginning of these terrorists, they would have faced some kind of opposition or hesitancy in accepting. In a short way, have you faced any of these with your 126 new theories?
Oh, sure. Too much. Not some. You said, do I encounter some? No, too much. Some years ago, I was giving some presentations in Washington, D.C., and I gave a presentation about my prediction of what I call the post-democracy and post-capitalism. And I received some hate mails, emails, and then people will call me names. And more than 20 years ago, I made a prediction that China could one day become the most dominant power on earth, and the U.S. will decline together with the EU and all that. Oh, the reaction was absolutely negative, not a single positive response.
Do
But
you
now,
think-
there's no one talk like this to me anymore because it's become more and more obvious that
It's
China.
obvious
yeah,
now
so-
that
but
is what is
not,
actually
not,
happening.
Yeah, when I was writing my dissertation at MIT, it was in 1995. At that time, in my dissertation, I proposed that too. I also proposed some of this. I remember that I'm not going to mention names. Some of my of the faculty members asked me to delete the chapter
Okay.
on this. They don't like it. They when I questioned capitalism and democracy, they really did not like it.
Yeah.
They asked me, "Can you get rid of this chapter?" I say, "No. If you get rid of this chapter, what happened to the rest of my
work on-
thesis?
yeah.
I mean, this is you you cut off the head, then what do you want me to do with the body?"
Do you think some of this opposition that you face was probably because of location? If you had done these presentations in China, predicting that China would one day become the world superpower, that it would have been a little more accepting.
Yes and no. They may be a bit more listening to you, but they could be very skeptical.
Okay.
Because at that time, China was still very poor. Remember when I was talking about this, it was in the 1990s. At that time, China was like, they started opening up. And I was a U.S. Fulbright scholar, by the way. And I did some research in the Far East, and I interviewed a lot of people. And at that time, people did not think about this at all. And they were too busy to make money, to work hard, to improve their lives. If you talk about a future where China becomes dominant, they look at you, they say that you are not with us. Your mindset is somewhere in the clouds.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned.
I also mentioned too India.
Yeah.
I also mentioned that India will be the next dominant superpower too, but it will be the second ranking.
Okay. After China.
But this will be the new giants in the future. They will fight. Fight not mean necessarily physically. We'll talk about like rivalry.
Okay.
So the future will not be the rivalry between the U.S. versus else. In the farther future, the U.S. will be out. Now,
Okay.
out doesn't mean out of the picture. Out simply means that the dominance will not be between the U.S. and those other powers. In the future, farther in the future, the dominance then will become China and India, for example, and some other powers too. But if you go further ahead, it will not become China and India. It will be the next frontier of human exploration and all that. So this everything is so historically contingent.
Yeah. Is it kind of like a repeat of history?
Yes and no. I also propose one of the 128 theories is one theory is a unified theory of everything. I propose 3 of them so far. One of them is I propose more than 71 principles governing the behaviors and action and entities in the entire universe. And one of the principles over here is I said that everything in the universe is something which is cyclical, is always something which is linear, which means that thing can go back to a circle to repeat itself, but there are also things which also going linear too. So it's not that one or the other, yes in a way, but no, it doesn't repeat. So the answer is not yes or no. The answer is yes and no. It repeats itself, but it also will not repeat itself.
Okay.
So, that's what I call the existential dialectics. This is the competing forces in history and in the universe. So we can see that in history already, many things can be repeated, and you see them quite often. But they also do not repeat because they don't happen in the same way. Violence is a good example. Criminality is another good example. Prostitution is another good example. Drugs and other war is an example. Do I foresee that in the future one day there will be no war, no criminality, no drugs, no prostitution, no nothing, everything will be nice, holy and all that? I think this is just a wishful thinking.
Wishful thinking.
But they will not repeat in the same way. They will be different. In fact, another theory is about the future of sexuality. In the future, you still have prostitution, but not in the same way that we did before.
Okay.
So you see that that is another dimension. I have written, I have a vision about everything, no matter what it is.
As you mentioned, your vision of China becoming the dominant world power. Using China as a model, can we as a small society here in Trinidad, a small country as Trinidad, gain some of the respect that China is gaining?
That is a very good question. But by the way, that book is titled Beyond the World of Titans and the Remaking of World Order, in which I spoke about the emergence of new powers, and in this case China and also India, and then you have the EU and the US, but those will be number 3 and number 4, but then you have some other powers too. But you asked the question, small powers, how can they survive? Repeat itself, but also do not repeat itself again. Small powers in human history, they often follow certain patterns. Is that if they are small, they cannot fight the big guys. So how can you fight the big guys? Well, you have to manipulate the big guys so that each of them could be nice to you in a way.
You become a friend of them.
Yeah.
You befriend them.
So if you are one here and one here, one giant and one giant, I cannot fight you, but I will be nice to you in case you beat me. I say hello, hi.
You go in the other direction.
Can you help me out? If you beat me out, I say, well, hello. Can you beat me out? So small powers are often very clever. They often manipulate, but some of them sometimes they make mistakes. It's just like sometimes you can be very emotional, you can be very angry, and then you make some judgments which turns out to be incorrect, and they will swallow you, or they will attack you, or conquer you, or colonize. So Georgia is a good example. Georgia provoked Russia. They think that Georgia made a mistake in siding with the US and the EU, they will be fine. Russia could never dare to attack. They did. And now they still occupy some of the... So when you provoke them, you give them that excuse to come in and take you. Venezuela is another good example. Now there is the opposition and the government somehow they do not get on. They fight now.
Guaido and Maduro.
Now the opposition is inviting some major powers to come in and fund them and help them. This is very bad for Venezuela because it is the same problem in Libya, in Yemen, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Mali, and all that. So you have a chance. You have an opportunity, but you also have some pitfalls that you have to avoid.
Be careful of.
But people sometimes make mistakes in life.
Yeah. So we're talking about anything and everything. So I see, as you mentioned, Venezuela. The opposition, Guaido has returned because he has his meeting with American.
Not just the US, but also he is also.
And do you think the interest is really in saving Venezuela there or bettering themselves?
This is Protest 101. This is one of the reasons that in fact, I can talk a bit about Trinidad now because you said that you would like to
because I was going to lead up now to when...
No, don't jump in yet. You don't know what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that in this example, to answer your question, I can use some example here to answer your question. Sure. Look at the history of Trinidad. You have African slavery here. Okay, why did that happen? Well, the Europeans, when they colonized and conquered Africa, it was not just because the Europeans at that time was able to conquer Africa. They received help from the local Africans. African slavery, but it could not be possible without the help of the local blacks. They helped the Europeans to enslave themselves. And because there was slavery at that time, even before the Europeans came. This is a good example that everywhere in human history, there are always some people they sell out. They betray their own people, and they are greedy. They have certain interests, power, wealth, money, whatever they might be. And outside powers, they know that. They come in. That's called divide and conquer. I come in if I can find anyone who can work for me, and there are plenty of people they will work for me no matter what. They betray their own people. and then conquer and divide. That's why when Europeans came to Africa or Europe, the Latin America at that time, many of the Africans were helping them to colonize Africa.
Yeah.
So answer your question, this is one of my, this is
And
life.
it would have been almost
So
the
to-
same with India.
It is look, everything in life is not just the small powers, even the big powers. There are some people in the big power, they also sell out too.
Yeah.
Russia was trying to intervene into the American election, and there were some people they are willing to open to that because they benefit them.
Once it benefits you.
This is not one-sided. It is like, and the U.S. On the other side has been interviewing into the affairs of so many other countries.
Yeah.
So everyone else is doing the same thing. Say for whom? Well, in public, for everyone, for all. I'm for you. I'm always for you, and no one else. In
But
private,
behind closed doors,
it's rhetoric
personal.
and reality is life.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about what's plaguing Trinidad right now? Crime. Do you think we'll ever have a control on crime?
This is a question which is very heavily value laden. Criminality is whether you are here now or you were in the past or you will be in the future, there will be criminals, by the way. There will be crimes. Let's not forget about it.
Yeah,
So
you can
control,
never-
no, this is like controlling prostitution, controlling smoking, controlling drug trafficking. And all this is very media savvy.
Yeah.
But try to be a bit more real. Just something about corruption is part of life.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that you do nothing. I'm not saying that either. You will do something about that, but in the context of the culture and the society that you are in. For example, in some African countries and the Caribbean countries, there are some countries, they have a lot of criminals.
Yeah.
Your neighbor, Haiti, is another good example. They have more criminals and more crimes there than over here. So by comparison, things are not that bad here. But on the other hand, it doesn't mean that you do nothing.
Yeah.
Okay, you still have to confront them. But my point is that you need to look into the issue from multiple perspectives again.
Okay.
From the whole picture that I'm trying to tell you, interdisciplinary, not just from one angle. You use one vision, one theory, and you use to explain everything and say, hey, that is the reason. That's what we should do, and everything will be fine. No, it doesn't work like that.
Okay.
So both sides of the equation.
So our spike in crime, and as you say, it's not as bad, but when we look at it, it's bad because we've never had these kind of numbers. When let's say murders, we've never had these before in the history. How do we really deal with it if we want it to go down? We want to feel safer here.
By the way, fine. Bad for you, but wonderful for them.
For the criminals.
Yeah, it's wonderful. When you talk like this, it's very bad. When they talk about this, it
It's
is
good.
the biggest news that they ever have.
Okay.
It's wonderful. It's heaven. Why do they want to abandon such a good news? Godfather. You watched those films,
Yeah.
Godfather? Yeah.
I've seen a few.
Godfather is doing all these things. For Godfather, it's wonderful. For the police, for the law enforcement, I'm talking about the clean one, not the corrupt ones. Well, that's why society and criminals have been fighting with each other since the beginning of time. They will continue to fight against each other. And also, we have to understand the sociology of crimes too, in the sense that how do you treat something as criminal, as crimes? That's also a value judgment. As I said before, I can see this again in a different context. Smoking marijuana can be a crime, right? Okay. But suppose someone decriminalize marijuana tomorrow, all of a sudden the crime rate will go down. Those people who were criminals before, now they are not criminals. They are just like you and me.
Because it's no longer
So
a criminal act.
this is the politics of morality, the politics of labeling, the politics of ideology, the politics of many other things combined together. So I'm trying to put your question in a context and say, you want to find a solution, you said. Before you find a solution, you have to understand the context of what you are asking, because there are people out there that will fight you.
And we're mentioning morality as well, values. There would have been a time in Trinidad history because of family ties, because of religion, because of one group looking out for another, family members looking out for another, we would have felt a safer, we would have seen a more value-based society. Does this come back around in the cycle?
In what way that you are asking?
In that, okay, we've seen a loss of respect, especially with children. We're seeing violence in school erupting. This was not so in the past. Does this change or escalate in changing Trinidad? Or do we go back to when it was a safer time?
If you want to talk about safety, safety is also relative too. I can see that as the Caribbeans become a bit more westernized, or in this case Americanized, or whatever nice that might be, there is a tendency for the society to become more individualistic. When the society becomes more individualistic, each person is thinking about himself or herself. Your family, you first. The country, the common good, they are the last. Or who cares? Okay. But when society or the culture is collectivist, you think about the common thing. You are under pressure to conform to the common standard because you are judged on that basis. But now, if you are judged become more individualistic, then this is the negative consequences. But before you say you want to get rid of the negative consequences and no respect, everything is individualistic, either my way or the highway, either me or you. Before you think that it is bad, but do you want to get rid of the good things that you come along with that? Look at all this materialistic consumption that I see every day here in Trinidad. You go to the shopping mall, you go to the city center of the shop, they encourage to consume. A lot of people are very happy about that. They enjoy that. It's life. But when you consume like that, do you care about other people when you consume like that? See, I'm saying that you cannot have the cake and eat that too. That's what I'm trying to say. So before you condemn that, think about why you got into that in the first place. Because of the culture, of the economy, which become more and more consumeristic and individualistic. People will start thinking about that. Nowadays, people, when they finish work, they go to the shopping mall, go to buy something. What do they want? A car, a house, a beautiful dress, or cell phone, or God name it. There are tons of things that they want to buy. Do you care about salvation? Is that your first priority? When you finish your work, what do you do first in your mind? Are you going to say, I want to go back to your house, I spend more time with God? Or do you think that you want to spend more time maybe
enjoying?
Right. Okay, so you see, there's the other side. When you become very laid back, very
relaxed.
Relaxed. Remember the consequences too. So when you focus on the negative and they say, wow, look at this, no respect, people don't care about this and this and this. Well, think about why do you fall into that at the beginning. So you want to get out, fine. But think about what you need to do to get out before you blame everything on the criminals or blame politicians, I don't know what.
So I'm looking at our time. So we touched a little bit on crime, a little bit on the politics. Let's shift a little bit to education. What's your vision on education as a whole?
Education nowadays has so many problems. I don't know which one you have.
We're seeing more educated people. There are more titles behind their names now than before. Are they really becoming educated, more intelligent human beings?
Now that is a value judgment question. If you talk to someone who is religious, who is spiritual, then the person would be very unhappy with what he or she sees nowadays
Yeah.
about education, or this education is not really to make you more enlightened and make you more spiritual, but it makes you more like you know what to do, how to get a job, how to impress other people when you go to a job interview. And now they lie, they cheat, they do all this to get more money, how to be corrupt. I was in Colombia, by the way, a few weeks ago, and I went to a museum. And I saw some cartoons.
Yeah.
Okay. And one of the cartoon is something like this. There was a man and there was a boy. And the man asked the boy, what do you want to do when you grow up?
Yeah.
And the boy say, corruption.
Because that's
Because that is where the and then some other cartoons nearby talking about the corruption in Colombia among the police, among the government officials and all that. When you look into the context, that is like a satire, by the way. But the point that I'm trying to make over here is that, about education. The educational system that we have nowadays on Earth is not so much for enlightenment. It's more for, especially if you are in the Western world, and the Caribbeans have been influenced by that. Things are very individualistic, very materialistic, and this is what you have to face the consequences. I'm not telling you what to do, but my job is to show you the other side, the context of your questioning and the answers. And before you go into like this, because when you ask a question, you don't know how many assumptions that you are making in asking that question, and then unless you understand the assumptions and the path that you go in, you will just repeat the cycle again. You versus they. You understand me? We need to get out of that box that I'm trying to do.
And how does someone get this? How does someone get out of the box?
Well, you in a way you need to have more people like me. Because now that the majority of the humanity is like you, that is the problem here. You are in control, not people like us. Because there are not many people like us who think like that. And we need to get out of that box. But those people in power, I'm not talking about politics, I'm talking about everywhere, in school, in family, in organization, in church, in mosque, and everywhere they are a larger people that think in that box. And that is, that's why I say in the larger perspective, the human mind cannot survive to solve problems, because the environment that we have been in is evolving very fast, and we are spreading out now to the rest of the galaxy in the future. And those kind of environments, the mindset that we have, it cannot last for a long time, but it's just evolution. I'm not saying it's good, I'm not saying that it's bad. Dinosaur, is that bad or good for them to become extinct? I think it's relative. But as a historian, for example, you can say that the dinosaur became extinct and then some other species emerged. But the same logic, I say, well, the human species became extinct one day and then you have the new ones. But I'm not saying that I like dinosaur or do not like dinosaur, or good or
you
bad.
want to be extinct at some time.
But you die, I die one day too. So,
is there a clear-cut way, well, it might not be, but to begin opening your mind and seeing the larger picture instead of seeing just the box that you're in?
Yes. Opening your mind is only one thing. There are some more difficult intellectual endeavors that you have to do. That's why I propose more than 128 different theories and vision. Each of them is supposed to resolve one problem in a certain way, but some other will combine all of them. So yes, you can. And one of them is to get out of that box. That is very important beginning. Once you are able to get out of that box, and all of a sudden you see things in a totally different way, and you are not so dogmatic and so absolute, or on the other side you are not so relativistic anymore. You can see the thing from many different angles of observations and how they link together. And all of a sudden, when someone asks you a question or do something, and you are able to understand the assumptions and the context, that can help you resolve problems.
Okay.
And that's what is needed in many ways.
Okay. Let's look at an example. Let's say we recently had a father murdering his young daughter. my first reaction would be to criticize him.
Yes.
Yeah, because I am thinking that the values and morals would be that a father is supposed to protect and not murder. How do I open up my mind now to see that on my perspective it's bad, but on his side?
This question can be looked at in many different ways. Let me give you some examples. Nowadays in mass media, because it's very politically correct, when you hear a story about, I don't even know that story, but I follow your story anyway, about a father murdering his daughter, the reaction, the expectation is for you to condemn the father right away. If you say anything negative, people say, oh my God, you are A, B, C, and D. Okay, they will call you names and all that. Now, don't do that. I have written books on criminality or criminal justice, a book on criminality. And what I propose in that book, for example, is that just like in court, you must listen to both sides of the story. Nowadays, if you hear a news that a woman was raped in the subway, all of a sudden everyone point into that person, whoever, that must be evil, bad, But we need to know what happened. My advice is that when you listen to cases like this, do not get emotional and jump into conclusion right away.
Okay.
This is one side of the story. What happened on the other side? A judge which is impartial is someone who listens, gather data, make the investigation before you speak. Okay? Not to open your mouth right away, but listen a bit more, collect data, and then you will see what happened. Things are not so simple, and things are much more complicated. And how do you do it? Well, I propose another methodology is that you need to look at things from the perspective of the mind, nature, society, and culture. These four, within each of them, you have a lot of different factors. By the time you combine all of them, all of a sudden you can see the case in a much better perspective. Things is not always... See, this is also part of the human nature, which is in many ways animalistic. In the sense that people like to pursue their own interest. They come to you, they say whatever they like to say. Their point is to convince you to join them for whatever they do, to support them. So they come in with a narrative, with an agenda, with a motivation. And if I want to come to you and say that, okay, can you help me? This person is hurting me. You will say this person is bad, evil, But at the end of the conversation, say, oh my God, this person is so bad. I need to go and do something. But you
did not get the other side of the story.
But if you go to that person, the person will do the same thing to you again. The person say, no, he is very bad because and you listen to him say, oh, I don't know that. He's, oh my God, how dare he did that to you? Now I have to go back to him. You understand me? So your job, don't jump to the conclusion like this. What happened to the father and the daughter? Why was this a problem? You have to make the investigation, the context, on the basis of these four major approaches that I just mentioned.
I've always had this saying or thought repeated to me, and it's there. Science has taught man to go to the moon. Science has taught man to swim like fishes. Science has taught man to fly like birds. But science has not yet taught man how to be a better man. Is that true?
That can be true, but that's not relevant. You asked the wrong question. It's not the business of science to make you into a better man. Science is not about ethics. You should ask this kind of question to someone who is a moralist or ideologue.
So what makes us a better man?
A scientist only answers the question, let's say something is true, something is false, or something that they do not know. If you ask them, is that true? They say, yes, it's true, or no, that's not true. They say, oh, this question, I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't have sufficient evidences. That's the best that they can do. They can prove something or do not prove something, and they may say, well, this one I did not prove it, but maybe I proved that maybe only 25%. But the other sides, I don't have sufficient, or I don't have sufficient knowledge now to answer that. So that's why science always comes with some new theories. Before that, we have, for example, in physics, you have Newton mechanics. And then later on, you have the theory of relativity and then quantum mechanics. And now we know that none of them is complete. We need something more. That's why they're working on the unified theory of everything in physics. But they also encounter a lot of different problems. So you see that it's the same. But science does not tell you how to become a good man.
Yeah.
That you have to go to religion, ideology, ethics, jurisprudence, politics, and they will give you tons of answers. Then, of course, those are ideologies. And each of them will try to impress you and try to be on their side. And that's why people have been killing each other in the name of whatever that is. In the
name of religion, in the name of politics.
In the oldest day, always in the name of God. In the Middle Ages, in the name of God. And nowadays, in the name of democracy, human rights.
Everything else.
Yes, whatever, you see that it's the same. And then people will kill each other, bomb the hell out of each other with great satisfaction in the name of that.
Yeah.
In the older days, people were so fanatic in terms of killing, burning, people, and they were so happy to do that. Nowadays, people bomb other countries into hell in the name of fighting for human rights, democracy, capitalism, whatever you name it. The same thing I can repeat in a certain way, but not in the same way.
Let's we've got just about 10 minutes again. Let's touch a little bit about health.
Health.
Yeah. And there was this term here where you mentioned about post-human.
Yes.
Yeah. Are we becoming a less healthier people when you look at the past and then now as we go into the future? And then again, would it be what is health in my perspective? Would it be like that?
Yes, that is true too. But health is also going through a lot of metamorphosis. Nowadays, here in Port of Spain, nowadays you see a lot of what's that, KFCs? Yeah.
But actually, Trinidad has the most KFCs per capita in the world.
Yeah,
so.
this is one of the things that I noticed very quickly. You may ask yourself the question, is that healthy to eat all of those food? I'm not saying you should not eat them. I'm not saying that. You asked the question about health. I'm just asking you a question. So my point is that nowadays we have a lot of fast food. And fast food is not necessarily good for you. And traditional food in many ways is even better. But again, it's a value judgment. So what I'm trying to say is that there are a lot of things in contemporary life. They are very unhealthy. Look at all these people. I'm not going to mention names. I'm not going to mention the countries. They have big bellies. You see many of them everywhere. Okay. The more developed they are, the chance is they are very fat. Okay. Why do they go to the gym to have exercise? Why? Because they live such a lifestyle which is so indulgent. They make themselves so unhealthy that they have to go to the gym each week in order to fight against it. Think about it. If you really care about health, why do you spend all this time, money, energy, and all that, make yourself so fat? And then you have to spend time and spend money to pay for the gym, to pay a membership, to pay for the membership fee in order to get rid of that. Let me give you one example. When I was in the Philippines a few months ago, I passed by a gym, and then I saw some people, they are very big belly, and then they went to a gym, and that is a equipment, that is a bell, and then they tied them up, and then they push the button, and the bell thing, like this. Have you ever seen that before? Yeah. So, but this guy was very bad, very fat, big belly, and then he had to spend money. So I walked in, I saw that, and so I just say, I asked for membership fee. I say, how much does it cost to be a member of this club? And then the guy says, give me some figure. But I know that fee was high for the local people. For the local population, that fee is high. And yet people spend all this money to talk about health, and then they spend extra money to something about smoking. People spend time, sometimes I know some people, they spend so much money each day or each week to spend on smoking. And then they get sick, and then they go to the hospital, then they have to pay for this and medication, subscription and all that to fight against it. Well, what is the solution? Maybe you should not smoke at the beginning, maybe you should not eat all this kind of fast food. So you ask about health. In many ways, health nowadays the more developed you are, the richer you are, the more unhealthy you are in a way.
You become.
But on the other hand, there are also many other things which are also healthier too. Like in developed countries, the air is a bit fresher than in some poor countries, for example, they can be very polluted.
Yeah.
In some slums, for example, I visit more than 100 countries, and I have been in many areas where the smell is very bad, and the environment is just very, very toxic, and people live like that and drink very dirty water. In Haiti, for example, it could be shocking for you to go to the street, and sometimes people pick up some water from the pipe, from the tunnel, because there was no other water, and they only put some plastic thing to filter the water.
Yeah.
I say, but that is not sufficient.
It's still contaminated.
Dirty.
Yeah.
And they say, if we don't use this water, we will die. Yeah.
That's the only source.
Yes. So when you talk about contemporary life, by the way, this is physical health. I'm not talking about mental health yet. There's another major problem about mental health. For some, the more developed you are, the chance is you think that you can go to another countries and bomb other countries, and in many cases, it is the most advanced countries. They go and bomb the health of other
smaller ones.
Countries. Is that mentally healthy? Look at how many people you have been killing. Look at all these people. Now that you have in Venezuela, by the way, you have quite a number of people from Venezuela. They come in Trinidad. Why? Because they want to escape. You go to Afghanistan, Iraq, now you go to Syria, and you will see all these people and millions of refugees fleeing their own countries. Where do they go? They go to Germany, or they go to Turkey, or they go to wherever they can go to, or go to Africa, go to the neighbors, or go to you, now this place.
They're here. Yeah.
See, is this kind of, you talk about mental health, is it healthy mentally for people to engage in all this kind of killing and wars? By the way, this is not that they are poor. These are well-developed countries, well-educated.
They're educated, they're developed, and
why?
developing as well.
So you asked this question about health. You say that is health become a problem? Isn't that ironic? One of the major slogans, one of the major assumptions or driving points about modernity, you understand that project modernity is to assume that somehow the pre-modern, the ancients were ignorant, dogmatic. And we, the moderns, now the post-moderns, they are much more enlightened, much more educated, much more knowledgeable, and therefore we are much better, much more progressive. But think about this. The more we talk like that, the more we become ruthless in eliminating, in conquering, enslaving, but in the name of the enlightenment.
That we all seek.
By the way, the European colonization of Africa and also in Latin America and elsewhere, it happened during the age. People talk about enlightenment. Isn't that ironic in a way? That's why in my publication I say there's no wealth without poverty, and there's no poverty without wealth. And by the same logic, there's no health without sickness in your case, and there's no sickness without health.
We're quickly running out of time, but for our listeners and our viewers who would be interested in reading up some more about some of the things that we've spoken about, how can we access these? Or where?
This is a serious problem in a different way. Number one, it's difficult for people to understand me because I have written so many books. It's not that one book you come in and tomorrow you say, I know what you are thinking, that's your ideology and all that. 160 books in all fields of knowledge. And many of them make people extremely uncomfortable. Why? Because they are not interested in this. Let's say you are, you're a mathematician. But if I have written a book, let's say on boxing, you probably do not find that. Why do I have to read a book on boxing if the fact that my joy is about mathematics? On the other hand, if you talk to someone who is a playboy or a playgirl, why does he have to read a book on enlightenment or metaphysics? For me, it's not. So for someone, that's why I say people like me, there are not many of them. And there are not many people out there who are interested in people like me, to be honest with you. So will they read many of this book? No. They can pick one, two, the one that they like the most. But then that is just one side of the big pie. Now, where do you get all these books? And it's also very expensive. So one quick answer is that the The good news is that nowadays in a lot of national libraries or university libraries, you can go in to the and talk to the librarian and ask them to acquire 1 or 2 books of your choice, because their library, their function is to acquire books. And you can just say that this book is something that I want to read. Can you acquire the book? The chances they will say yes, and then once the book in, you can just go there and read that. Unfortunately, people don't do that. They don't have the time and the motivation to have to go to the national library, the university library, have to spend time asking the librarian to order a book. I have to wait for a few weeks before the book comes. It is too... But there's the copyright problem too, because I don't publish my books. There's the publishers, they publish, and you have to pay for it. I cannot even allow, by the way, to put my books on the internet for free. I don't mind.
Because I was going to ask you about having these books online.
In fact, I'm thinking that if I can get some sufficient funding, I will cancel all these copyrights, and I will take them into my own hand, and I will put everything online and let them...
Very quickly, is there a YouTube, because I saw a YouTube here, but is there a YouTube channel specifically dedicated to your work?
No. I don't have any official sponsor.
So it's just a general search.
I think about it. Who will be willing to sponsor someone like me? My thinking is not, it's totally outside the box.
Professor, we're quickly out of time. It certainly was a pleasure having you here. And as you can tell, listeners and viewers, there's so much that we can talk about and certainly keep going on and on and on. I've got an extensive list here that I can just pull any topic from, and Professor would be able to elaborate on it. But once again, thank you very much for joining us and sharing this hour with us here on Radio and TV Jaagriti.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation.
So here's where we wrap up this special edition of the program, Conversations, right here on your #1 Radio and TV Jaagriti. News at 5 is up next. See you.